Hello, my name is Jakob Teilgaard, and I'm delivering my paper as a video format. And I've been looking very much into the article called Collective Intelligence Ratio, a measurement of real-time multimodal interactions in team projects. The reason for this is that I'm quite, as an occupational psychologist and as a worker with people in everyday life and everyday work, I think it's quite interesting to look into how these different tools and different technologies actually can be applied to working with collaboration online. Some of the basic ideas that I picked up on was the first and foremost was the whole idea of social presence and as a predictor of satisfaction, which is one of the conclusions in the article that has a quite importance. And I've been working quite some time with social presence, and I've also experienced from time to time how do you create social presence. At a point, I worked with World of Warcraft as a leadership development program, or as a tool for leadership development program, and it's quite interesting to actually see how that works. The big challenge with working with World of Warcraft also is, can you create social presence in a collaborative environment without having a visual stimulation? As it has been pointed out in some articles that I read about social presence, is that the whole visual impact or input is quite important, which also makes quite sense for me as a psychologist, where around 80% of our knowledge is gained through our eyes. In World of Warcraft, you are represented by an avatar, and that the way that avatar can actually interact creates also the possibility of people experiencing social presence. So whether it's an avatar or it's a physical image, like a video or web conferencing system, the whole visual stimulation is an important part of creating social presence. So normally when I teach stuff around creating social presence in collaborative virtual teams, I also point out that that having a collaborative environment which is also visual is quite important. The other idea that I picked up on was about the statistical model that is used to analyze this. I think it is quite challenging that to put a statistical model over something as complex as human interaction in the way that is done, or what is strived to, and also a way of measuring the CIR, because there will be a tendency to count rather than to actually say something about the content. And as many of my colleagues will know, that it's just not a matter of number of words, but also a matter of the quality and content of the words that's quite important. So furthermore, then I think that the whole counting situation also approach also will give a bias towards extroverts who think out loud and talk a lot, rather than introverts who might think internally much more. What you do in this situation is that you create a scaffold of numbers around the interactions, and in that way deconstruct reality into statistics. And in my book, in my understanding, in my approach to science, I would say that this has a tendency to reduce very complex interactions into some number of categories. And when you do that, you reduce the complexity because you have to put them into those categories. and I think that in my book it actually loses scientific value, because you have to do so much reduction of the informations that that too much is lost in translation from the interaction side on one side and putting it into numbers on the other side. I don't know whether, I'm from Denmark, I don't know whether this is a difference between an Anglo-Saxon approach to science and a more European or continental approach to doing that. I'll leave that up to those who see this to decide that. The last part that I picked up on was about the transactive memory, which I think is quite interesting, and how that whole influence team dynamics. What I think made me a bit curious is, once again, that there is it has a very strong focus on the cognitive processes within the team, and not also focusing on the whole group dynamics as concepts of inclusion. How well are you inside the team? How the influence is distributed? Whose view have more influence than others? And also, how close are we? How interwoven are we into each other when it comes to that? I think it's quite interesting, but I think once again that the article it doesn't promise too much, but it also has it reduces something that is very complex in my book, something that also needs to be addressed if you want to understand this, and also to get a grip of that. How can this be used? Well, I think that the idea that I picked up on most, and I think is most important when it comes to that, is the whole idea and whole concept of social presence. For me, it is so. The article stressed the whole idea of creating social presence, which I find is quite hard when you are working with a virtual team in collaboration and innovation and decision making, because many teams has reluctance to actually use some of these more virtual tools where there's pictures. They have a tendency to just reduce meetings to audio, either by phone or WebEx without the camera and stuff like that. And I think that I think it's so important that that you actually stress the need for the visual input to create that social presence, because it has a profound psychological effect on the participants. You feel more obligated, you feel more interactive, you have a better presence of being there and looking into the situation. I hope some of my thoughts are useful, and I'm looking forward to receiving any peer feedback from this delivery. When it comes to this, I'm still uncertain what level of degree there is for comparing other articles and other sources, which I would like to hear other people's ideas about. Okay, thank you very much.